The signal. In the year 2139, humanity stood on the edge of its golden age. The United Earth government had just launched its first stable, faster-than-light drive. Colonies dotted Mars, Europa, and Titan. Terraforming efforts on Proxima B were ahead of schedule. For the first time in history, the human race was united, not by fear, but by ambition. That's when the signal arrived. It was picked up by Odyssey, a deep space research vessel stationed beyond Pluto. At first, it seemed like cosmic background noise, harmless radiation. But nested within the static was a pattern, too precise to be natural. It repeated every 13 minutes and 7 seconds. Pulses, data packets, a message. Back on Earth, it took weeks of decoding by quantum AIs and linguists. The signal wasn't a greeting. It was a warning. Do not expand. The Zorvani Empire forbids it. There were no coordinates. No introduction. Just a declaration of ownership and a line drawn in the stars. Earth's political leaders were split. The optimists called for diplomacy. The pragmatists wanted to bolster planetary defenses. The cynics suspected a hoax. Still, in the spirit of caution, the UEG dispatched a diplomatic probe, sleek, unarmed, and pulsing with peaceful intent. The probe never reached its destination. Halfway to the signal's origin, the stream from the probe cut to static. Then silence. No wreckage. No trace. Just gone. And then they came. Without warning, an armada appeared in orbit around Jupiter. Colossal black ships, silent as death. No communication, no theatrics. Within minutes, Luna Base was gone, erased by a single beam of green light. The UEG's orbital fleet scrambled to respond, but were dismantled like toys. Earth's skies burned with descending fire as Zorvani vessels took position around the planet. Their message was relayed across every broadcast frequency. You have violated the sovereignty of the Zorvani Empire. Submit and be spared. Resist and be purged. Panic rippled across the globe. Major cities went dark. Civil unrest flared. The illusion of safety shattered. In a sealed bunker beneath Geneva, President Amina Rao stood before a global camera feed. Her face was worn but unshaken. "We did not ask for war," she said. "We did not invite this empire to our home. But they came anyway, not to speak, not to share, but to demand our silence, to halt our dreams. They came to extinguish humanity's fire. But fire cannot be silenced." She paused, voice iron. They made contact with the wrong species. The broadcast ended. Across the planet, something shifted. Fear hardened into resolve. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, and ordinary civilians began to prepare, not for surrender, but for survival. In the cold void beyond Earth's orbit, the Zorvani fleet waited, expecting obedience. They had crushed countless civilizations before. They would soon learn humanity was not like the others. The first strike, they struck with clinical precision. The Zorvani didn't invade like conquerors. They descended like executioners. In the first 24 hours, they annihilated the orbital defense ring, silenced Mars Command, and vaporized the Titan research nexus. Cities on Earth trembled under sonic quakes from orbital passes, warning shots meant to show dominance. It worked for a moment, but humanity is stubborn, and the Zorvani had mistaken shock for surrender. From the ashes of Earth's scattered command, the United Earth military reformed. Decentralized, mobile, and angry. The old playbook was thrown out. Humanity would not meet the Zorvani head-on in a traditional war. That was suicide. Instead, they would fight like cornered wolves. Lieutenant Ava Morales led the first counter-operation, codenamed Glass Fawn. With only a handful of commandeered satellites and modified orbital drones, her team hacked into the remains of a downed Zorvani scout ship. What they found changed everything. The Zorvani were advanced, yes, but their systems were rigid, predictable, designed for control, not adaptation. They relied on ancient code layered over millennia, never rewritten, never questioned. Morales' team found vulnerabilities, exploitable gaps. The next strike came fast. In the skies above Earth, a hijacked Zorvani cruiser suddenly turned on its formation, ramming a battleship and ejecting its core into the heart of the enemy fleet. The explosion lit up the night sky from Africa to the Arctic. It was humanity's first victory, and it was broadcast live, unintentionally, across Zorvani command frequencies. The Empire had never seen a primitive race do that. Rage followed. Zorvani ground units landed in Jakarta, Sao Paulo, and Cairo. Massive bipedal warforms, coated in shimmering alloy, stomped across city blocks, demanding total compliance. But they met resistance not just from soldiers, but civilians. From hackers rerouting supply drones to farmers planting EMP mines beneath their fields. In Sao Paulo, a retired mechanic disabled a Zorvani walker with nothing but a salvaged plasma coil and a magnetized forklift. In Geneva, President Rao gave another address, short, direct. This is not a war of territory. It is a war of identity, and we will not be erased. She wasn't wrong. Across Earth and the colonies, the human spirit ignited. In labs, scientists worked without rest, merging human AI with scavenged alien tech. In shipyards, engineers rebuilt orbital platforms into kinetic railgun turrets. On the streets, people no longer waited for salvation. They became it. The Zorvani struck Earth expecting a swift campaign. Instead, they found chaos, creativity, rage, and unity. Above Luna's shattered remains, a captured Zorvani commander was interrogated by General Alvarez. "You were never meant to resist," the alien said, confused. "You were meant to kneel." Alvarez leaned in, blood on his sleeve. "You should have studied your history. We've never been good at kneeling." The turning point. The Zorvani Empire had never fought a species like this. Their enemies usually broke after the first strike. Obedience followed terror. Resistance was rare and always short-lived. But humanity, fractured and diverse, didn't break. It adapted. And adaptation was something the Zorvani had forgotten how to fight. At a hidden base beneath the ice sheets of Europa, a team of engineers, soldiers, and cyberneticists completed a prototype weapon Earth shouldn't have been able to build. It was called the Valkyrie Protocol, a mobile FTL jump ship capable of destabilizing local space-time using harvested Zorvani drive cores. A weaponized jump field. The Zorvani deemed such technology too chaotic for warfare. Humans saw it as an opportunity. Commander Elias Rourke captained the first Valkyrie ship, Acheron. Its target, a logistics hub deep in Zorvani space, a node they believed to be unreachable. With a push of a button, the Acheron folded space, emerged in orbit, and unleashed its payload, an FTL distortion pulse that ruptured the station's core and crippled 3 support fleets before they could react. It was humanity's first attack inside the Empire, and it shook the galaxy. Back on Earth, the victory was more than symbolic. For the first time, they weren't just defending. They were striking back. Even more shocking was what followed. A coded message arrived from within Zorvani space. Not a threat, but a whisper. A Zorvani scientist, codenamed Yelvan, had defected. Disillusioned by the Empire's brutality, he offered schematics, fleet movement data, and the Empire's darkest secret, a network of slave worlds, bound by fear and pain, used to power the Empire's infrastructure and serve its machine priests. Humanity didn't hesitate. In a joint strike led by Rourke and General Alvarez, human ships folded into the Erewhon system, home to one of the largest labor colonies. The plan was simple: break the chains, ignite a rebellion. It worked. The liberation of Erewhon wasn't clean. It was brutal. Thousands died. But when the smoke cleared, the enslaved Erewhonians, insectoid beings long stripped of identity, stood beside their human liberators, not as subordinates, but equals. And that was what terrified the Zorvani most. Humanity didn't just fight. It inspired. Within weeks, revolts erupted across the Empire. On distant moons and mining asteroids, subjugated species rose up, chanting names they'd only just learned. Earth, Rourke, Rao. Human. The Zorvani High Command held a meeting on their throne world. Their empire wasn't just under attack, it was unraveling. And then came Earth's ultimatum, sent through every subspace channel. Withdraw, or we bring the war to your doorstep. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empress of the Zorvani tasted fear. Humanity was no longer an anomaly. It was a threat. Shattered throne. They said Zorvani Prime was untouchable. For 10,000 years, it had stood at the heart of the Empire, surrounded by layered defenses, armadas, and an entire system engineered to repel invasions. And yet, Earth's fleet arrived above it like thunder. It wasn't just humans. It was a coalition of the once enslaved. Aruninans, Vishari, Mix, and 12 other liberated species, united under one banner. Not because of conquest, but because Earth had given them something no empire ever had: choice. Commander Rourke's fleet led the charge, the Acheron at its spearhead. On the surface below, the Zorvani mobilized their elite. Massive biomechanical war engines, city-sized defense grids, and quantum storm barriers. But none of it mattered. Humanity had adapted again. The Prometheus Protocol, an AI-driven combat swarm, built from Zorvani tech and human chaos, descended from orbit. Self-replicating, unpredictable, impossible to lock down. They disrupted everything, targeting hierarchies, power nodes, communications. While the Empire scrambled, Earth's infantry landed. General Alvarez led the boots-on-ground assault. Side by side with Arunan warriors and armored mixed squads, they stormed the Spire's citadel, the seat of Zorvani power. For centuries, its walls had never been breached. They fell in 3 hours. Inside, the Empress was found not in a command chamber, but in a panic bunker, surrounded by guards, watching the collapse of her empire unfold on trembling screens. She was old, elegant, and utterly undone. "You are primitives," she whispered as she was let out. "How could this happen?" President Rao stood before her in the newly seized council chamber, broadcast across the galaxy. "You ruled by fear. We answered with hope. You built an empire on silence. We brought a voice. You tried to stop our future and only made us fight harder for it." The Empress was taken into custody, not executed, but placed on trial before a galactic tribunal made up of liberated species. It was a new kind of justice, one the Zorvani had never recognized until now. Earth did not plant its flag on Zorvani Prime. There was no annexation, no enslavement, no replication of the old empire. Instead, the Galactic Accord was born, a council of equals, seated by Earth, founded on the belief that unity must be chosen, not forced. The final memorial was held on the ruins of the Spire. The names of Earth's fallen were carved beside those of Arunanan martyrs and Vishari rebels. A single inscription stood above them all. They tried to break us. Instead, they woke us. Looking up at the stars, Commander Rourke stood beside Rao. "Do you think they'll come again?" he asked. Rao smiled, eyes fierce. "Let them. This time, we're ready. And we're not alone. Because in trying to halt humanity's rise, the Zorvani had sparked something greater than resistance. They had ignited a revolution. And in the black between stars, a new future burned. Fierce, free, and unmistakably human.